Sit back and enjoy as I tell you a marvelous story of how a little lad named Mark Ross in 2013 single handedly took down Morgan Stanley's entire risk database for 45 minutes and the major implications it had. Well, both on the risk system and my career. Without further ado, here we go. So, in 2013, I was still in Baruch's Master's in Financial Engineering program, and I decided to join Morgan Stanley's risk IT department. Now, if you know me, or you did know me back then, I was always very excited to be in the front office, especially in sales, interacting with clients. Why would I choose to do risk IT? Well, I actually consulted with my father because I had a job offer with a fintech company that was opening a small division in New York, and they were looking for an entry-level salesman. So I had an offer for them, which actually would have paid more than the Morgan Stanley role. Or I could have joined the very well-established Morgan Stanley in a risk IT role, which is the back office of the back office. Speaking to my father and a couple other mentors who I trust very well, they all suggested I join Morgan Stanley because of the brand and because of my personality and my networking skills. They were all confident that I would find my way in Morgan Stanley and it would just be a better way to start my career. I trusted them even though it wasn't what I wanted to do, and it turned out pretty well for me. Anyhow, back to the story. So in 2013, I found myself sitting in the risk IT desk as an associate. Now, I was on floor 33. That was with all the firm risk managers. And one day, typical day, a few weeks into the job, I was just reading the risk systems manual, which was my job starting off. It was horribly boring, but I had to get familiar with the risk systems. So after reading the manual for a few hours and starting to lose my mind, I turned to one of the consultants next to me. Her name was Sneha. And I said, Sneha, what do you suggest I do to beef up skill-wise to do well in this role? So she laughed and said, SQL. That's all you need. So at that point, I really didn't know much about SQL. I said, can you teach me? She said, select star with a big grin and turned away. Now, if any of you know SQL at all, select star is basically take all columns, and if there is no constraints at all, it's just take all columns, take all rows, grab everything from a table. I think she was joking, but I took her pretty seriously. So I managed to get into the database. I don't remember who. Someone on the team gave me the credentials, and I got access to the risk database, which they probably should not have given to someone who doesn't know any SQL. So I got into the database, and I started looking through the tables. I was just browsing, and I found one table that said something to the equivalent of risk trades or firm positions. I don't remember exactly what the table name was. I looked at it. It had over 1 billion rows, which I found really interesting. So I went to a blank page and I wrote select star from positions, or whatever the table name was. Not something you should be doing. So basically, I was querying the entire trade data set going back since Morgan Stanley's been recording data. That puts a major burden on the system. So it was spinning. I remember even turning to her and saying, how long do queries take? And she said, well, it varies. Again, not thinking maybe to ask what I was up to. It was spinning and spinning, so I decided to go grab lunch while it was spinning. Generally, if your query is not returning in a few seconds, something's wrong. So I just minimized the screen and I left and I went to lunch. After about 15 minutes, my query crashed the entire system. That means that all of the risk reporting teams, the reports were no longer working. All the Excel tools that were piped into the database were no longer pulling data. All the regulatory reports were failing. All of the risk checks and sign-offs, just everything was not working because the database was down because, well, you look up user ID, it would say Ross Mark ran this query, and it says the query and then says how it crashed the system. Anyhow, I got back up. It only took a few minutes. I ran down to the cafeteria. I grabbed something. I came back to my desk. A few minutes later, this fellow Guido, a sweetheart of a guy, he comes running onto the floor. Who's Ross Mark? Who's Ross Mark? And like everyone just points at me. I'm like, what? I had no idea at this point I did something wrong. What are you doing? I'm like, I having lunch? So he goes to my computer, he starts clicking around, he sees the query I was running, he slaps his forehead, he's like, please don't ever use SQL again. I was like, well, what have I done wrong? So anyhow, he managed to resolve it. He rebooted the entire database for about 45 minutes. Everything was down. They forbade me from running SQL. I think the rest of that job, or at least for the rest of the year, I didn't run any SQL. Then after I proved I had the ability to actually write some logical code and I understood what I was getting up to, but they did put a lot of restricted access on our team after that. But here's the interesting part, the whole story. After I realized what I had done, I naturally expected to get fired. I didn't get fired. Not only did I not get fired, I didn't get called into anyone's office, and nobody gave me any warnings whatsoever. I heard nothing. Now you tell me, do you think that one junior individual who takes down an entire risk system for 45 minutes, you think the senior managers don't know that that happened? That all the reports they're expecting, all the jobs they're expecting their associates and analysts to do, just halt for 45 minutes? You think they have no idea that someone took down the system and who it was? Of course they know. Of course my manager knew. Of course my manager's manager knew. But they also understood. I was 3 weeks into the job. I made a mistake, and they didn't want to make me completely panic. Now, whether it was the right thing for them to not even engage me, I don't know. But I really respect that they didn't freak me out, and they just let me kind of wallow in my own, I don't know if fear's the right word, but understanding, recognition of what I did, and you know, I didn't do it again. Maybe had I done it again, I would have gotten fired on the spot. Maybe then I would have gotten a warning. But I really respect that they were just kind enough to let me figure it out on my own and not beat me over the head. Will that happen if you make a mistake of this magnitude? I don't know. But I can tell you with a fair amount of certainty, if you're not in like an investment banking position where their client reputation's on the line or something like that, you're not going to get fired. And far too often I see junior people who are just joining finance too scared to try anything. They just stick within the confines of their job and the exact job requirements and never do anything else because they don't want to mess up. It's okay to mess up. Your manager's messed up. Your colleagues have messed up. Probably the CEO at the firm's messed up. I remember this woman, Carla Harris, who is an outstanding, amazing woman. She is a managing director at Morgan Stanley. She runs a whole group. It was really inspiring. Like everything I've ever heard her say was just pure inspiration. And she was telling my group once when she was talking to us how she was doing a trade when she was starting out. And she also did something like horribly wrong that actually cost the firm money. And you look at someone like that and you're like, clearly making millions of dollars, massively successful. And she also messed up in a major way. This is normal. I'm not encouraging you to go and do crazy things that will probably have a pretty bad impact in your career. No, I'm not encouraging that. But get out there and try things. Explore and learn. Don't stay so confined to your job requirements that you don't learn or grow. That's not worth it. You should definitely take the risk. You know what? Occasionally you'll make a mistake, own up to it, and move on. I know it's strange advice, but far too often I see people just not growing because they're not willing on taking any risks. And you have to take risks to get rewards. Anyhow, let me know in the comments what you think. I know it's a bit of a strange piece of advice, but after this story, I felt pretty strongly about it. I'll see you guys next week.